considering our window of tolerance before we say yes, because we
Mhm.
can certainly overextend ourselves and
Mhm.
commit to things that will deplete us.
Hello, hello, lovely people. Welcome to my virtual couch. Happy Friday to you all. We have a special guest today, Dr. Jerica Wesley. She is a licensed clinical professional counselor, PhD. She's out of West Virginia, the owner of, is it Restored Wellness Enrichment? Did I get that right?
Restore Wellness Life Enrichment Center.
Restoredness to wellness, life enrichment. Okay, and I will have you introduce yourself, but welcome to the virtual couch, Dr. Wesley. How are you today?
I am well. Thank you so much for having me this afternoon. Just to share, I am Dr. Jerica Wesley. I'm a counselor educator at Marshall University in West Virginia. I truly just have a heart for parents, and my journey to motherhood was difficult. I navigated experiences with infertility and pregnancy loss, and that really fueled my passion to pursue more research in that area, specifically to African American women and reproductive laws in the state of West Virginia. So
Mm.
that's just a little piece about me.
Yeah, and I think it's great that you used your own personal journey to now help others because, especially in the African American community with women, the infertility, pregnancy loss, I've experienced both as well. And it's something that is a lot of shame and people don't want to talk about, you
Yeah.
know? So the fact that you have that gift to help others, I think is incredible, you know, to really reduce the stigma around it.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so that's great. So today we are talking about just dealing with the holiday stress as a mom, just surviving the holiday pressure. So I want you to kind of talk a little bit about why does the holidays have and more negative impact on specifically women. Statistics show that women face more pressure, deal with more anxiety and depression. So why do you think specifically women deal with have a negative experience with dealing with the holidays?
Yeah, well, I think, just being a woman, being a mom, being a birthing person, like all of those things, we have a certain amount of emotional load that we're already navigating, right? And then when that's coupled with the stress of the holidays and more frequent visits or things that take us outside of our regular schedule or routine, trying to fill our schedules with an already demanding schedule with more things and more tasks, it can just make some of us kind of bubble over. I was talking to my husband, I think it was Sunday, and I was like, yeah, I'm just so glad that I have 2 weeks to prepare for Christmas. And I was like, I don't. It's definitely next, it's like tomorrow. So,
Yeah, yeah.
making sure that even the stress and the things that we have on our plate, making sure that we're being reasonable with those and checking in with ourselves because with our work life balance and
Mhm,
showing up in all the spaces that we have, all the hats that we wear, it's
mhm.
already challenging, but the holidays can just make it that much more difficult to kind of navigate the day to day responsibilities.
Yeah, I like that you said checking in with yourself. Can you explain a little bit of what that looks like? How does a mom check in with themselves about how they're doing with this holidays pressure?
Yeah. One thing that I really like to use to check in with myself and also others and my clients is the window of tolerance.
Mhm.
It was created by Dan Siegel, and I have a picture of it here, and I can send it to you too.
Yes,
Um,
please.
but it's a really good tool. We always want to stay here where the unicorn is, right? We want to stay in that area where we're calm, we're balanced. We have the capacity, kind of the bandwidth to move through the day to day interactions. Because
Mhm.
what we know is that with stress and trauma, it will restrict and reduce our window of tolerance. It will make it more narrow. So stress and trauma can like really reduce our window of tolerance. And things such as meditation, listening to music, engaging in hobbies, getting reacquainted with activities that make us feel whole and rejuvenated. Those
Mhm,
are things that can really help extend our window of tolerance.
mhm,
Showing up for ourselves, making sure we're staying hydrated, making sure,
mhm.
that we are actively involved in counseling if that's nurturing and good for us, right? Making sure that we are staying connected with a social circle and a village that is good for us. So
Mhm.
that's one way of kind of checking in with yourself to see when's the last time that I've done this, because work can't be your only way to escape
Right,
things. So
right.
the tool
Yeah.
that I like to share.
This is awesome. Yeah, and if you could send it to me, that'd be great. And I'm also going to put a link in the show notes as well for
Sure.
viewers to access it. What are the themes that you notice as far as the specific challenges that mom are facing during the holidays?
Oh my goodness. I think that society has a way of showcasing what the role of a mom should be, or the role of a woman should be. We're bombarded with society's messaging, like on social media. We are supposed to be, I think of um, those who kind of adopt the strong black woman schema, right?
Mhm.
We get in this situation where we begin to prioritize the needs of others beyond ourselves, and that definitely has a cost. It has a consequence. So I think those are some of the themes that kind of come out, that are projected upon women and moms and birthing people, that make it mm, not as easy to recognize our needs.
Yeah. You kind of answered my next question, one, which is great, which is what are the sources of these stresses? And you mentioned that how society looks at women, social media, this idea of this just being the perfectionism that
Yeah.
comes along with it. So yeah, that's wow, that's very important to mention. How does this affect our functioning? Right. So
Oh my
dealing with
goodness.
anxiety disorders, how does this affect that? What does it look like?
It could look like a lot of different things. It could mean, like if we're in this space where we're thinking about the window of tolerance, if we're at this elevated space where we're like a volcano, we're about to explode, it could be that we're more anxious or angry, that we feel out of control. We might feel that fight or flight experience. On the other end of that, with hypoarousal, it could mean that there's numbness and exhaustion. We are very fatigued. Experiences with depression can be noticed during those times. So it kind of depends on where we are, but things to look out for are, how are we doing with our energy level? How are we showing up for ourselves nutrition wise? And how easy is it to kind of fall asleep? Those are some things to kind of look out for, to notice how we're doing mentally during these
Yeah.
really kind of difficult periods when our routine is off.
Hmm. And you mentioned something very important, which you talked about hydrating. A lot of people overlook that simple task of it. And I like to tell clients, like, when you're dehydrated, you're more anxious, you're confused, your brain isn't clear, your
Mhm,
tolerance level is low. And sometimes I
mhm.
might ask clients, like, when's the last time you drank water? They're like, oh. Like, if you have
That's
to think about it, then yeah. So that's a simple self-care thing that people really
yeah,
overlook, because we're going, 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 and we don't
yeah,
kind of pause. So mentioning that and nutrition, I think that's very important, you
yeah.
know. Any other self-care practices that you think that moms should engage in? You mentioned the social circle, meditating.
Hmm. I really think, in terms of self care too, sometimes depending on the mom or the person, there could be, um, I don't know, this image of what self care looks like. So I try to focus or word it in a way that yes, it is self care, and it's also self preservation too. So
Mhm.
yes, we definitely need to stay, hydrated and all of those things. And then I begin to think of the DBT please skill. Um, and I can share that too as well, a graphic of that. But please, the PL is kind of looking out and making sure that we're treating symptoms of physical illness. Because, oh my gosh, if we continue to go beyond where we need to, if we're continuing to exhaust ourselves, I
Mhm.
mean, we're going to end up hitting a wall. The E, eating balance, and whatever that is for you, we know what those good fuel sources are for us.
Mhm.
The A, avoiding mood altering drugs.
Mhm.
So making sure that we're being very aware and cognizant of that as the holiday season approaches us. We are usually bombarded with different opportunities to engage in different settings, which is fine. But take that time, check in with yourself to see what's going to be best for you. Yeah.
Mhm.
S.
Mhm.
Sleep. We got
Mhm.
to make sure we do that, and making sure that we're following a consistent sleep schedule. And
Mhm.
E, one I'm trying to work on, but the
Mhm.
exercising regularly. And
Uh-huh.
um, just look like, adding in movement. So,
Yes.
yes, self care, but also what do we need to make sure that we are preserving our resources so that we can continue on at the capacity that's helpful for us and our families.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think sometimes like social media has made self-care such a like a fad thing, right? Like it's not
Yeah.
like get your nails done and get your hair done, but like it says self-preservation,
Yeah.
yeah. And the exercise, look, I'm trying to work on the exercise too, but what I tell, like I think sometimes like with moms, there's such this all or nothing, right? And I always have to tell
Hmm.
moms like you don't have to go into the gym or run a marathon, just movements. Movement is very important. What do you think are some boundaries that either you tell your clients or moms need to be aware to establish during this time?
Oh my gosh. Goodness, boundaries that I share with others and that I try to model. Maintaining our routines and our rhythm. That's something that I don't think, like, I just have to amplify that because, like, I think it's probably next week around the 27th, between the 27th and the 1st. We don't know what day it is anymore. We just know that we're eating cheese and having carbs, right? But we need to make sure that we're following a routine that is good for us.
Mhm,
So I think that's one of the things. And also reflecting and considering our window of tolerance before we say yes, because we
mhm,
can certainly overextend ourselves and
mhm,
commit to things that will deplete us.
mhm,
And I think this one too, in terms of guilt, not letting guilt kind of drive your decisions, because once again, we can get further depleted, and move away um, from the restorative properties like of the holiday season, right? It just becomes more burdensome, if we're letting guilt kind of drive our decisions, and then that could just complicate our experience and really deplete us and restrict our window of tolerance.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
and then in advance, if possible, kind of reflect on your values, right? In order to practice language that you're going to put in place for those boundaries with your family, with your friends. So we'll already have those battle statements ready. Oh, that's not a topic that I'm able to talk about. Or, if there's um, something going on at a family member's home or a friend's home, and maybe you're saying, okay, I'll come, but maybe I can't stay but for this amount of time. So just
Mhm.
thinking in advance of what some of those things could be, kind of just to protect you,
Yeah.
and to think before you need it.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, and you mentioned like having an exit plan. I feel like I've been talking
Yes.
to clients a lot about like because they tell themselves like I have to go to this family member's house, but it's trigger for me. And I
Mm-hmm.
go, well, you don't have to do anything, right? But if
Mm-hmm.
you feel like you have to go because of children, things like that, have an exit plan. You don't have to be there the whole time,
Have an
So
exit
that's like a
plan.
boundary too. Is like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to be there the whole time because so around this time is where it can be either a great time for moms or it could be really a depressing time. And that makes me want to talk about things like grief because the holiday times are where it's
Yeah.
it's a great time, but it's also the loneliest time. So can you touch
Mm-hmm.
on that a little bit about grief and the holidays?
Absolutely. And I think kind of going off that boundaries piece to grief, like even thinking of the financial aspects of that, because I recognize that like grief and Those can sometimes we could try to fill some of those spots through spending or through eating and things like that. So this is just something to be aware of. But also in this grief piece, making sure that we're talking about it. We know that oftentimes we spend a lot of times in our heads with, replaying events with individuals, but making sure we share about it, letting folks know how we're doing, because it's this almost expectation that someone will have this life-changing event and they're supposed to be okay tomorrow, and that's not reality. So giving someone the ability to talk about it, and also jumping back, considering your boundaries around that and places that you can go and maybe you shouldn't need to go to. So thinking about that, and also finding a way to honor that loved one. When I had gone through the experience with pregnancy loss, like one of the big things for me was trying to figure out a way to honor my angel babies, and
Mhm.
that was through I did a mother's ring, right? And
Wow.
so yeah, and like for the holidays, it could be a Christmas ornament, it could be, a special light or a display or whatever seems right for you for that person to incorporate them into that. But finding a way to honor. And again, it kind of goes back to the boundaries, but setting realistic expectations for yourself
Mhm.
and be prepared and almost being prepared and almost accepting that it's okay to feel your feelings, because
Yeah.
that shows your connection to that person, and that's
Mhm.
quite okay.
Yeah, yeah. How do so if we were, let's say if you had a client that was a loved one, how do loved ones support moms or a friend support a friend mom, you know, during this time?
Oh my goodness, I just think about the village,
Yeah,
literally. I know COVID is still a thing in our communities, but I think anything that we can do to cultivate relationships, if we can just go over someone's house, sit, binge watch Netflix, literally just having some physical presence.
yeah.
We can't, we can't overlook that, the beauty of that. So extending that olive branch, reaching out, yes, a text message, maybe a phone call too, but reaching out, to get someone out as well. Maybe it's going to lunch or, getting something from Starbucks or just going in to have some physical connection and conversation with them. Just
Mhm.
being organically yourself.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Because sometimes, like spouses, they know there might be stress going on, but I don't know how to support this person, and
Right.
especially with grief too, you
Yeah.
know. Sometimes, people don't know how to handle grief. Like, do I bring it up? Do I not bring it up? You
Yeah.
know, and that's why I like the idea of honoring the deceased memory.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
Yeah.
So in addition to the window of tolerance, are there any other resources, tools, tips that you think will be helpful for moms during this time that we
The
didn't discuss?
window of tolerance is my absolute favorite. Thinking about that, but also getting connected to other kind of vehicles of support too, whether that be Postpartum Support International, there's therapy for Black girls. There's a whole host of different social media folks that you can kind of attach yourself to, and kind of just get up under just for some daily encouragement, right? And recognize that, we're not alone in this experience, even though people aren't posting some of their more difficult moments.
Mhm.
Um, and also, if we are in a space where we are kind of in that lower place within our window of tolerance, and we're, kind of down and we're having some very low moods, and then some of our thoughts um, are a bit more kind of not where you're used to being.
Mhm.
If we're having any thoughts of wanting to end our life or hurt ourselves or anyone else, I strongly encourage folks to reach out to 988, which is
Mhm.
the suicide, crisis lifeline. And that could be via text message or through the phone call. So, there are certainly resources available. Those are some kind of national resources that I would encourage folks to connect with their OB to see if there's some other more local resources. And Postpartum Support International does have local chapters. Um, and so that might be a good place to start as well.
Yeah. Just a couple more questions.
Mhm.
How for moms, right? There's this pressure to make the holidays perfect for,
Oh
say,
my
like
God.
our kids, right?
Yes.
It has to be
Yes.
beautiful, it has to be perfect.
Okay.
What do you say to moms that feel like, and you talked about finances earlier, I may not have the finances to provide the Christmas that I want. I don't want to
Mhm.
disappoint my kids, right?
Mhm.
Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, because the finances thing, oh my gosh. Like, I think that's a whole boundary within itself. Trying
Yeah.
to
You
really
have to get the
establish a
perfect
budget.
gift,
Oh,
but
I had to find the
it's
perfect
too
gift.
much.
It's $2 million, right?
Right.
So I like to think of, we do the very best that we can and that we don't get caught up in this thought of guilt. Like, if I
Mhm,
don't do this, then this person will feel this way around me. But I
mhm,
think a way to reframe it is not necessarily buying the gifts, which it can be a thing, right?
mhm,
But it makes me wonder, what are experiences that we can carry out and share, right?
mhm,
And in inviting our children in with that. So it's like, what should we do? Not
mhm,
what should we get, but what are some things that we should do for Christmas
yeah.
or Kwanzaa? Or, how should we really celebrate this experience? What are some things we should do as a family?
Mhm,
Right. And I think that is a way to kind of take the pressure off us and allow our children to kind of speak to things that are interesting to them, and also kind of figure out a little bit more about their love language, right? And how we can kind
yeah.
of give back to them in that way. But I
Mhm,
think, like, inviting them in more and giving ourselves permission not to be perfect, because it's
yeah,
impossible and we will certainly deplete ourselves if we do
yeah,
that. So making memories,
yeah. And I
figuring
like that you're saying involve the children.
oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, have them have some control in this too.
Mhm.
Yeah. Because it might not even be a gifting. They may be like, let's all wear pajamas and watch movies, right? Like that quality time. They may say
Quality
something
time.
totally different. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, my daughter, I was out of town and I came back and I was like, well, let me know what you want to do. And that's all I said. Let me know what you want to do when I get home. And she's like, oh yeah, we're gonna have a sleepover.
Oh,
Bet. Bet. We had a
yeah.
sleepover on the couch, right? So
Yes. Yeah.
yeah,
That quality time with mom, right?
quality time.
Yeah. And lastly, how if somebody has a trauma associated with the holidays, right? So maybe
Yeah.
growing up, holidays was a terrible time of the year. I'm triggered. I have some trauma, but I have kids.
Yeah.
How do I handle um, maybe reliving trauma around, the holiday time?
Yeah. And that's a hard one.
Hmm.
A hard one because it's everywhere, right? When we turn on the TV, when we go outside. So definitely acknowledging that is a part of your experience, and that's okay, right? And if it means establishing um, some boundaries around things that you can do and can't do, and also, you know, seeking support around that, because if it's something that's constantly depleting you at this season or during this season, you know, there could certainly be some different ways to, I don't know, increase your relationship with the holidays, especially, as we're working to support our families too, right? So we can try to work through some of those stressors and traumas, just so that we could have more capacity to show up for ourselves and our families during that time.
Yeah, that's great. And so where can people reach you and are you taking new clients?
I am taking clients in West Virginia. I have the
Okay.
ability to see folks virtually and in person,
Okay.
but I can be reached. My email is jwesley@restoredwellnesswv.com.
Awesome. So I'll put that in the show notes as well. This has been very helpful. I think this is something that mothers need to hear. and especially Black moms. And I think it's just great work whenever we are doing work specifically for moms, because it's such a unique population, right? There's a lot of
Yeah.
things that we don't address. So it's been very helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, and happy holidays.
Happy holidays to
Full of
you.
less pressure and self-preservation.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Jerica.
You're welcome.